Hi, John. Great to see you.
Hello, great to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm very interested to hear about you. So you fundraised for MS Ireland and you did the Camino uh, Portuguese section, didn't you?
Yes, we did. I have to say it was an amazing experience, and the fact that I got to do it with my mum,
Yeah,
who is 77 years of age.
amazing.
And it all harks back to late summer or autumn time last year, and just randomly scrolling as you do online. And I was like, I saw, and my mum has done the Camino twice before, or parts thereof. And I saw this post on, I can't remember, it was lovin.ie or something anyway, to say that there's Camino routes in Ireland, and there was one opening up in Bray. And I was like, oh my God, because I live in
Yeah.
Kilcool, used to live in Bray, my mum used to live in Bray. I was like, oh, there's a Camino route opening in Bray. So I sent it to my mum on WhatsApp. This is probably October time last year. And then she was like, oh, we should do that. And then she's like, but if we're going to do that, then we should do the whole Camino. And I was instantly thinking, of like 800-kilometer trek. But she's like, oh, but you can just do a select bit. And I was like, of course, mum. And she's like, look, I think this might be my last Camino. So I'd love to be able to do it with you. And so I was like, absolutely. And I was like, well, look, on the caveat then that if we're going to do this, have this amazing experience together, then we need to do it for a charity. And I already knew where I was going with it. And I was like, so MS Ireland was the only real choice. And of course, with things that, are going on in the world, without getting too political, but, Ukraine and Russia, Palestine, Israel, there's a lot of deserving charities out there. But the fact of the matter is, MS Ireland is a charity close to my own heart, because a number of years ago I was given a potential diagnosis of MS, and I didn't really understand what it was about. And it just, straight away, I obviously got information. I knew it was going to be potentially devastatingly life changing. So I would have looked to MS Ireland for support. So there was no, in my mind, there was no question of doing it. A, doing the Camino with my mum, but B, doing it for MS Ireland. So that's where it was all born, and the rest is history, as they
I
say.
know, and it's amazing. Like I just was looking there before I came on, and it's at 1,800 and maybe 30 or something like that, and the target was 2,000. So just below, you'll see the link. It's still open, the fundraiser, so
Yeah.
we'll get it up to that. And do you know, the I didn't know about this until I read about your thing in the paper that it's the Celtic Camino Mortera, and it's in Bray. Does it go from the seafront?
Yeah, it basically, it's, well, in English it is, I think it's just simply called the Bray Coastal Route.
Yeah.
So it actually starts at Finnaby's in Bray, for anybody who knows. It's a big coffee shop, right literally on the seafront. And amazing spot to get a coffee. Bit of a plug for Finnaby's. No affiliation. I'm not sponsored in any way. But they've now. So when we did it in early November, and so it had only just been really kind of properly opened. But I was just in Bray recently, and they actually have a little souvenir I got from the. You
Oh,
basically
cool.
you follow these markers the whole way,
Wow.
in Spain and Portugal. So you have the scallop shell, the symbol, and then these yellow arrows that points in the direction. And it's not on this, but you'll have these little plaques which gives you the kilometer marker to show you
Yeah.
how far you have to go to Santiago. But anyway, so recently they've just installed one of these outside Finnaby's and Bray. So I don't know if that's the whole route, but it goes from, and it's amazing. I have to say, it's 30.2 kilometers. And the idea is you walk it in the day. So it's the same as the Camino in Spain and Portugal and France, etc. Is you get a Camino passport from the Irish Camino Society. You pay €10 for it, and then you get stamped everywhere. Well, not necessarily everywhere in Spain. Pretty much everywhere along the route will
Yeah.
stamp you. But here, so you get a stamp in Finnaby's. You get a stamp as you go along. And then so you get to St. James's Church, which is just past Guinness Brewery. So it's, as I was saying, 30.2 kilometers. But it's an amazing walk. And in fact, you're kind of walking in, historical footsteps, because, of course, James Joyce's Ulysses is a stream of consciousness in the day of the life of a journey, essentially from, well, Dalkey into town,
Yeah.
which, of course, is now famously celebrated by Bloomsday. Which is coming up. But anyway, so yeah, so we walked that in the one day, which was an amazing accomplishment, particularly for my
Mm,
mom again.
amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started, so the fundraising link, and thanks for sharing that. that was instigated back in November. So it was a bit of a two-pronged effort. So we opened it for that, and then we basically reinstigated it again for doing the Camino Portuguese just back there in April. So it's €1,835 we raised between the two legs, but it's a total of 147.56 kilometers we did.
Yeah, and you know, like, am I right in thinking that to get your Camino cert, you have to do like 100 Ks, isn't it?
Correct.
So if you did the 30 Ks in Ireland, you
Yeah.
could then, but you did more when you
Yeah,
went.
yeah. So to be official and to get your official accreditations in Santiago. So for anybody who hasn't done a Camino, and I strongly recommend you do, just to point out, I'm not particularly spiritual, or I'm not, overly religious, and so historically it's a religious pilgrimage. But pilgrimage in my mind, you're doing a pilgrimage for all sorts of reasons. So
Totally.
we were doing a pilgrimage together for connection and self-discovery and discovering a new place, and we were following in, as I was saying there, that the footsteps technically of James Joyce's Ulysses, but we were walking the Camino Portuguese along actual Roman roads which predate Jesus. But the whole point of the Camino is, of course, you're essentially following the footsteps of Saint James, who was one of Jesus's original disciples or apostles. But the Camino Portuguese was a very special route to select because it was one of the stops along the route. So we started in Tui, which is literally just across the border from Portugal, to go to Santiago. But one of the stops is called Padron, which is where St. James is supposedly to have first preached to the Iberian people. And I didn't quite realize the Celtic connection between Spain and Ireland is because before St. James arrived, Spaniards were Celtic. So we were walking along the route and you'd see a lot of these kind of Celtic symbols, which I'd associated to Ireland. And my mum is Scottish and they're Celtic tribes too. But you don't see these symbols in Scotland. So I kept seeing these Irish Celtic symbols. And I was like, what is the connection? And a lot of people didn't speak English well enough. And I was like, what does this mean? And I found somebody he was just like, we were Celtic before Christians arrived. I was like, oh, of course. But anyway, sorry, to answer the question. Yeah, so to officiate your Camino, you have to do the last 100 kilometers of any route, or if you cycle, 200 kilometers. But because we did Bray, you could basically strike off 30 kilometers. So we only needed to do 70. But we decided to start from Tui because it just sounded interesting and it made sense for us. So we ended up doing, the best part of 150K.
I've heard that. I heard that's a lovely leg. I've done parts of the Camino Francais, but I haven't. I've heard that the Portuguese leg is a gorgeous route. Like, is it through towns and the scenery, etc.,
It was
villages?
stunning, I have to say, particularly Tui, and we were definitely spoiled with the weather. No, no judgments to anybody. Do whatever you do. If you want to go and do the Camino in the middle of July, then fair play to you. But I can't imagine walking it in that heat with that many people, because you get tens and tens and tens of thousands of people walking all the Caminos in the high summer. So I think we picked a good time, but you could even do it earlier, because in March, you'd be a decent Irish summer's day. You'd get a 17, 18 degrees. We were walking in 23, 24 degrees heat, which pushed it a bit for my mum towards the end. But Tui is just absolutely beautiful, spectacular medieval town. And it's the sort of place you'd never, well, personally, I would never have thought, let's have a little city break. Oh, Tui, just wouldn't have crossed my mind. But because we were doing a Camino and we were selecting where we wanted to go, we're like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And as you're walking it, you get a completely different sense of the country, of the people, of the culture. You're not seeing almost what the tourism board or whatever wants you to see. You're seeing the authentic, raw side of the country. And I have to say, the Galicians, it's Galicia is the region. They are absolutely beautiful people, through and through, very generous and giving and caring and friendly. And people were coming up to us, thanking us for coming to their region to do the Camino. But yeah, there was a number of places that were just spectacular. And again, you just would not have necessarily known to have even gone there. So I got to see a different side of Spain from the stereotypical beach resorts, which is fine. We've all done it, and it's great. But it was just nice to see that different side of Spain, and just doing it on foot. You wouldn't see that in a car or on a bus, or it was just an amazing way to do it, I have to say.
And you know where you said you're not particularly religious, but did you get that kind of spiritual feel? Not even, you know what I mean? There is a certain kind of
Oh,
atmosphere
absolutely.
on the walk out. Did you get that? Like, did
Oh,
you?
100%, because you're walking in, I said, walking literally along Roman roads for a
Yeah.
good percentage of it, which predate Jesus. These roads are, you know, over, well, obviously, it's 2024. So, but 2000 years and more. And it was just amazing. But then you're walking in the footsteps of technically St. James and the other first, disciples in Spain, but then all these other people that have walked that route, from medieval times up to present. It's like, it is a very kind of humbling experience. So, like, I'm a walker anyway. I love to walk. I live in County Wicklow. I feel that I'm blessed, living in the Garden County, and living in Kilcoole. It's a 10-minute walk to the beach. Like, the mountains are 10 minutes that way, the beach is 10 minutes that way. It's amazing. But you're walking in routes that mean a lot to a lot of people for different reasons. And there was a lot of, it's Buen Camino is the greeting, and
Yeah.
you end up leapfrogging people as you stop for a break, and they catch you up, and then they pass you, and then so
Yeah.
you kind of get to know people. But people are there for different reasons. And there was a lot of this kind of graffiti of Buen Camino, the journey is the destination. And at first I was a bit like, cheesy, but it made total sense, because it is about the journey. And even from the religious aspect, it's about the pilgrimage, is about being with yourself, with your own thoughts in nature, reflecting, thinking about your faith. But then, as somebody who isn't overly religious, I was doing that anyway. I was going for I go for walks every day in Kilcoole, and I'll just go a bit introspective. But there you do even more so, in the fact that there is the religious emphasis. And I love architecture. I love churches. I have this strange fascination with graveyards. So you're visiting all these places, and you're on a quest, of course, to get to Santiago, to get stamps, to raise money, etc. So you have all these things that appeal to me, the logical mind, but then just like I suppose the spiritual side, if you will, is just going and sitting in these churches, just sitting in silence, just absorbing the energy, just where you are and your place in the world. But the fact that you're doing it on foot, it just all kind of just comes together in this
Yeah.
experience. And you can't help but to have this kind of feeling, this movingness inside you, particularly when you get to Santiago. You reach your quest, and Santiago Cathedral is just this spectacular
Yeah.
church.
And you went to the mass, didn't you? The pilgrim mass,
We
and
did. We went
were
to
they
Pilgrim Mass.
shaking the big?
No, the,
Didn't
the,
they?
the Fumidor, which is a bit disappointing, because it's supposed to be something to see, and it takes 6 men,
Yeah.
or the weight of 6 men to swing it. And so we didn't get to see it. Apparently, I was getting conflicting stories, but essentially it broke, and it costs so much to try to repair it that they haven't been able to secure funding, which I found a bit strange,
Yeah.
considering the spiritual center that Santiago is.
Mm.
But anyway, it is what it is. So we didn't get to see it, but I did get to do this kind of tour down into the crypt, and you go up and around behind the altar. You get to see St. James's relic, essentially, and people were crying, were overstruck with emotion, which was a beautiful thing to see, how much their faith means to them. And whilst again, I'm not overly religious, but it does move you,
Yeah.
to see people with that kind of
And,
that spirituality and faith,
and even
and
out in the
that
square,
connection to
with
nature.
everybody arriving, it's quite
Yeah,
special, isn't it?
absolutely. Yeah, it was
People
special
doing
because
their
you see
walks
all
from all over.
nationalities, all languages, people coming, because all roads lead to Santiago. And I think, is there 11 or 12 technically different routes,
Yeah.
but
I
some of
re
them converge into one. So by the time you get to
Totally.
Santiago, there might be just 6 or 7, but everybody's getting to Santiago. And the goal is to get to, well,
Yeah. And
technically the
people,
passport office, but to the church.
yeah.
Now, unfortunately, my mum got sick. So it was like an electrolyte kind of salt loss thing. So we didn't get to go to the church straight away. And so she was a bit devastated, but she was well enough for a day or two later. Luckily, we had some down days in Santiago at the end. So we went to the pilgrim office to get the accreditation. So we have the certifications, and then we went to the pilgrim mass. And apparently they used to read out the names of all the pilgrims that arrived
Wow.
that day.
Yeah.
But so now they're just reading out countries, and you hear, the Spanish priest, Irlanda, and so, oh, that's us. And everywhere we went, everyone's like, oh, Ireland, oh, we love, and oh, you're America, okay, great. But like we were really, really embraced
Do you
being
think you go
Irish.
back? Would you go back there?
Oh, 100% would. The Camino Portuguese, I would happily do it again, but I'd be interested to do another route or another few routes. It's certainly not my last Camino.
And do you know
I
there's
love to walk in it.
I was just going to say, there's a tradition like with MS Ireland, with like people doing the Camino and fundraising. Did you find that it helped you while you were on the walk, that the fact that you were and you knew that people were following you? And I would actually recommend people to read back now, if you're thinking about doing the Camino, to read your fundraising page, because you wrote
Yeah,
beautifully about
thank you.
each day. And I'd recommend people to have a look at that. But did you find that helped you, the
Yeah,
fundraising part of it?
absolutely. And it was good because when we landed back in Dublin, there was this moment where we literally touched down, and I looked out the window, saw, green grass of Ireland, and looked at my mum, looked out the window, looked back at mum, and she was looking at me, and I was like, did we, like, where are we? Like, it was just all a bit of a blur.
I know.
Because A, you're walking every day, you're not lying on a beach, and B, you're moving from place to place. So just to backtrack a moment, so the traditional pilgrimage way is you carry all your stuff on your back and you go from hostel to hostel or albergue to albergue. Essentially, traditionally would have been knocking on a door. Do you have room for the night? But you don't book. So you do go from albergue hostella to hostella to try to get a bunk or a room if you're lucky. So we didn't do that because my mom is 77. So we chose to go through a company. So basically we booked in advance. They pre-booked all the hotels, the luggage transfers. So we just literally had a small backpacks and we walked.
About accommodation.
So you're walking all the time, you're checking out your suitcase. So we never got to really relax. And my mom was sick the last few days. And so we were a bit on edge, and obviously she wasn't well. So like there was no downtime as such. So we had this really weird thing of like, did we, so anyway, the whole thing was the fact and what we did and what we saw. And I was trying to explain it in a way within the restrictions of the word count, because I can go on a bit, as I'm sure you've found out. That I wanted to try to explain, because people are sponsored, people are paying you money. Now, they're not paying with an expectation. They're donating money to an amazing cause. But the fact is, whether there's a personal connection or not, they're donating to the fact that we're walking the Camino, essentially, for MS Ireland. So I felt like there was like they deserved something back for their money. So I was like, the least I can do is to take some photos and to write something about what we've done and what we've seen. So I hope I did it justice.
Yeah, definitely.
But it was good for me. Now I can read back and go, oh yeah, remember, and look at the photos and stuff like that.
It's a
So
lovely
it
thing
was
to
a
have,
great,
actually. Never thought of it as a record.
yeah.
Listen, I said I'm going to put the fundraiser down below, and I would recommend people to go into it and read about because you've described everything. I think you just got it perfectly, the mix between the culture, and we didn't even talk about the food. I mean, the food in Galicia is amazing.
Oh
We
my
had the
goodness.
octopus, and
It's known
just
for seafood.
yeah,
And just living in Ireland, I love scallops, for example, but
yeah,
I wouldn't often order them because they come with a bit of a price tag. And we were getting these like plates of scallops for like
yeah,
€10, and it would be a sin to not do it.
yeah.
And just padron peppers, and it's just I had the best tomatoes I've ever had in my entire life. In Tui, and I would go back. This is going to sound a bit strange. I would go back to Tui, to that restaurant
Wow.
specifically, because it was just spectacular. And we had the opportunity as we were walking to go through a few village markets and town markets, and it was just like the array of seafood, vegetables, meat. It was just like the two of us were just like, must have looked like these, poor dogs drooling outside the butcher shop. It was just spectacular, but it's part of their culture. It's like food and drink,
Yeah.
and when you go to a bar or a cafe, you get these pinchos, which is like sometimes it's a small bowl of nuts and mixed nibbles and stuff, but sometimes you get plates with chorizo and different types of like a Parma ham with bread and cheese and or patatas bravas with tuna, and it was just like it's just this culture of eating and drinking, just not alcohol necessarily, but just being out and
I
cafes in the
know.
street, and it was just phenomenal, and really found an affinity to it.
I know. Well, listen, it's really shone through. So I want to thank you so much. And as I said, I tell you, we want to get that up to the 2000 mark below. But listen, thank you so much. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you. You really brought it to life for us.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And I again, I implore anybody to take up, the quest, do the Camino in Ireland and on the continent, and certainly, give a thought of doing it for MS Ireland. And buen Camino. Enjoy.
Very much.